Hello and welcome to another Blender tutorial brought to you by the Luwizart. My name is Emmanuel Okafo and I hope you all are doing well. In this Blender tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to rig a car inside Blender. So it should be really fun for all of us. Before we start, let's give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. So this model is not mine, so I actually got it from the free 3dmodel.com. Here you can find nice free 3D models, and they are paid ones too. The paid ones are quite high quality, and some free ones are also quite high quality. But either way, this is what I'm using. And yeah, so thank you, the creator of this model. I appreciate you. So I have gone ahead and kind of decimated this model because I wanted it to work faster. And since I'm not doing any sort of rendering, doesn't really matter. Just needed a car shape. Yeah, let's just go ahead and explore the shriek. Let me just turn off some noise so we can actually see what's going on here. And I will go ahead and turn off some procedural stuff. And where I'm going to show you guys how I set everything up. And finally, we'll probably just delete this. Okay. So the rig is quite straightforward. You have this nice controller, which they have like, I set up like a simple mechanical rig that can make it act this way. So if we even turn off the limitation, you can see it can even go even more crazy. I just use the limitation to limit how far it goes, and I'll be showing you guys how to set that up. And next we have the steering. This allows you to just steer the wheels as needed. I also have one for the back, though I know it's not quite realistic with most car models, because in a car the stuff that always steers is like the front wheels. But either way, I'm just putting this just to give more control to any animator that wants to add like extra motions or overlapping actions. Okay, so that control, we also have basic rotation. So you only have one, you just need to rotate one of this tire and it controls the other one. And it also works for this too. And now if we move this bone, you can see it's going to rotate, it's going to roll automatically. So this is just one way you could achieve this action. You could also achieve this action by, like you saw what I did earlier, procedurally rotating this tire. So I'm going to show you the reason why I chose to procedurally rotate it instead of using this one. Okay, and finally we have the main global control where you could use the scale, rotate, and do anything. So we also have another global control, but this one is just mainly a pivot. For instance, the car is trying to rotate this direction, we can just easily rotate it rather than so if you try to rotate it from here, it doesn't look quite realistic. So rotating it from here is the way to go. So that's why I added the bone there, and you can now do the steering and just add some nice motion here. Okay, so let's jump right into tutorial. So now we have a new fresh scene. We just have the car shell and we have the tire separated. So you can follow along all the shortcuts I'm using, because sometimes I get carried away and start using my shortcuts. So you can follow that here with this screencast key, but I'll try as much as possible to click buttons so you guys can follow along perfectly. Okay, so let's start. First of all, the whole process is just divided into 5 steps. So I'll set it up that it's quite straightforward to understand. So let's start up with the first step. So the first step is just adding basic deformer bones. So these deformer bones are what is going to be used to just move each of these parts around. So let's start. So we'll go to Object. If you hit Shift S, cursor to selected, like this. Then we go to add a new single bone. So we cannot see the bone right now. So we'll go into the viewport. So you want to go to this nice running stickman here, and you want to make sure you can see that. Sorry, you want to go to this object visibility, viewport display, set it to wire, and check in front. And now we can see our nice lovely bone there. Okay, so now we can just scale this bone up. So this bone is going to be the main shell. Like this is going to be the main controller of this nice shell. So for the placement, I'm going to place this here. Okay, just like this. So the reason for this is that I'm just basically setting up like a mechanical system that allows me to get those kind of wobbly motion that you saw earlier. Okay, so we have this bone here. So I think we'll just switch this display type from the default shape to a stick. So I think we can go here and switch it to stick, like this. Awesome. So now if we select this, the object, this car body, shift select this bone and hit Ctrl P. We'll select with empty groups. So, and now we want to select the bone, shift select the object and go into weight paint mode. Okay. So now in weight paint mode, so you want to just select this bone, go into the edit mode, press A for everything, and hit assign. So now if we move this bone, the entire car is going to move along. Okay. So now let's set up one for the tires. So for the tire, which is more tricky, so it's even more easier now we've separated it. So what we want to do is just go to the top view and select one of those tires and do Shift S, cursor to selected. So now Blender is going to place the cursor right in the middle, or approximately in the middle of the tire. And now we can go into the bone mode. So we want to select the armature again and hit Shift A, and it's going to add an armature there. Okay. And now we can repeat it for the rest of the tires. So I've added it to all the tires. As you can see, we have the bone placed there. And what we want to do is select in the edit mode of the bone. You want to select this and control inverse everything and parent it to this nice big bone here. And if you move this, the whole bone follows along. Okay. Now we want to select the bone like we did for the car body and shift select the tire and hit Ctrl P. Sorry, you want to select the tires, select the bone and hit Ctrl P. This time again with empty groups. Now we select the bone, select the tires, and switch to weight paint mode. So if we select one of these bones, we want to just switch our selection type from twig to lasso. Now we can just draw, assign. Do for this one, draw, assign, select the bone in the weight paint, jump into the object, edit, select, assign. So finally we do for this one, assign. Awesome. So you guys are doing great so far. So now if we move this, you can see the entire car is following along, and we have the tire rolling. So if you remember, I said an approximation of Blender is going to place the 3D cursor on an approximated center. So in this case, it got it. It was quite wrong where it placed it. So we need to fix it. So basically, how you want to fix it is just go into wireframe. So we'll just paint this real center of the tire and hit Shift S, cursor to selected. And now we can just manually eyeball it and just place the tip somewhere that looks nice. So you want to place the roots right at the center that we did with the 3D cursor. Okay, and we'll repeat it for this. So what I did is select the object, go into edit, select this point, Shift S, cursor to selected, and we can just select this tool and just place it here. So now when we rotate this, you can see it's going to rotate perfectly now. So one thing you will notice when rotating this tire is like I keep rotating it. It gets an essence like it's flipping. It's not giving you like a full 360. It's like flipping. If I don't know if you can see it very well, but as you rotate it, it flips. So we don't want that, since we definitely want the tire to be moving 360. So I'm just gonna select the 4 bones for the tire and hit N to bring out this tool menu. So we have this stuff here, the global gimbal lock. So I forgot the quantanium. I don't know how to pronounce that. Either way, so let's say rotation mode. So we need to switch this to a more convenient, a more useful one. So for this, holding down Alt, the Alt key, and you want to click here and want to select the X, Y, and Z. And now if we just make sure to select the right one. If we rotate it, we are not getting that flipping again. So it's actually going full 360. So you want to make sure that's set for you. And yeah, so that's that. So let's create the next stage, which we're going into, is to set up the basic engine, if you allow me to say that, or like the steering. So that's the next step for it. So for that, let's first start with creating that nice jagged motion that's kind of, I don't know how to put it. Anyway, I will just better show you. So we'll be trying to create. So now we'll be trying to create that wiggle motion which you saw from earlier for the main car body. So for that, we can select this bone, duplicate it, and just place it somewhere around here. Okay. So, but one thing we want is that this tip is placed at the same tip of this one. So what we want to do is Shift S, cursor to selected, and we select this tip, selection to cursor. Now we extrude and Alt P, clear parents. Okay. Now, if we move this is controlling the entire car. So now we want to parent this onto this. Okay. And then let's add a IK controller for this. So you can add an IK controller easily with a shortcut. If you select the source object and select the destination, you can hit Shift I. It's going to add an IK for you. And now we can just set this to 1. So if we move this, you can notice it's just moving one way, which is cool. And let's repeat it for this. So we select the source object and destination object, Shift I, and same thing, just set it to change to 1. And now if we move it, you can see it's moving nicely. So right now it's not working as it's meant to be because the tires are not meant to be following along. So we need to select the tires and Alt P, clear the parents. So now let's add a new bone. So this new bone is going to be the first universal controller for everything. So let's select the tire bones and select this and hit Ctrl P. And also we're parenting this one and this one to the main controller bone. So now if we move this, the entire car moves along, and if we move this, just the car shell moves. So let's create a limitation constraint because we don't want it to be so to be going so crazy. So we want to limit it. So what we want to do is just basically go to the constraints and add a limit location. So for the owner space, this owner space, we want to switch it to local space, and we'll just check on all this. So I'm just going to show you, just going to input the value which I use. So for the x and y, I use 0.1 for the maximum y and z. For the negative y and z, I use negative 0.1. And for the x, I use negative 0.05. And for the maximum x, I use 0.05. Now, if I move this, you can see we have that restriction to the motion. So like for here, like in this position where it's not doing as it's meant to be, you can actually restrict it. Just set this to 0.1. So we can actually restrict this slightly so it doesn't clip with the tire. Okay, so you're just making the work more easier for your animator so he doesn't make unnecessary mistakes. Okay, awesome. So for the next stage, we want to create the steering. So for the steering, we'll just select this two bone, we hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and it's going to place the cursor right in the middle of the two bones, and we can do Shift A to add a new bone right in the middle. So this will be the front steering, and we'll add the back steering just for extra control. And for these two steering that we've also parented to the main car control. And now we want to select this bone here and select it here and hit Ctrl Shift C. This is a quick shortcut for adding constraints in Blender, which is more efficient. You should really use this rather than just using this place, because here you have to input all the data, but here Blender does it automatically for you. So we'll hit Ctrl Shift C and we're selecting copy rotation. So in this instance, we only want to copy the rotation of the, if I'm not wrong, the Y rotation in the local space. So the reason I know it's the Y rotation is basically I want, when I rotate this on the Y axis, you can see here this value is moving when we rotate it in the Y. So that's why I know it's the Y axis. And I can also limit it if needed, but let's just keep moving because of time. So we want anything that happens to this bone, this one copies it. So we want, this should be the main controller for even this one. So what we'll do is select this, Shift C, select this one, Ctrl Shift Z, copy rotation. So set this to local space, local space. So now if we rotate this, we just need to just add all the main constraint here. So we just keep everything more organized and modular. Okay, so let's repeat it for the back tires. For this, we just do exactly the same thing. Select this bone, select this one, Ctrl Shift C, copy rotation. Now we know it's just the Y rotation we want. For the target, we set it to local space. Basically, whenever you're dealing with armature or bones, you want to be basically working in local space. So when you're working with objects, then you want to consider working with objects with the world space as needed. So like we did for the previous bone, we want to select this, Shift select this, Ctrl Shift C, copy rotation, set it to local space, local space. So now we just need to worry about this, and this follows. So right now, if I rotate this tire, you can see it wobbles. So we want to restrict that. So we just want it to rotate in the X rotation. So what we want to do is select this two, holding down Alt. We'll just click and lock everything, and then go ahead and unlock the X rotation. So now, no matter how we rotate it, it's just going to rotate in the X rotation. So that's nice. So we're almost done. So for the final engine rig is the pivot. So for the pivot, it's just basically same thing. What you want to do is just move this bone. This is the main controller here, and then we'll move this new bone we created. So if I move this, nothing happens. If I move this, everything happens. So now we want to now parent this bone to this. So Control P, keep offset. So now this is the parent of this, and this also moves independently. So now we can rotate this bone here while being also having the ability to rotate this. So that's that. That's just basically the main engine for this car rig. So for the next, for the second to the last step for this tutorial, which is setting up automatic rotate. So some automatic rotate is basically when we move this tire, the car, this tire automatically rotates along it. So the basic way we want to set that up is using a awesome constraint. I think it's the most elaborate and powerful constraint in Blender, which is called the transform constraint. So basically, same drill, we'll just select this bone, but before we do that, I have because it's quite tricky to work with this constraint, so I have a method for working with it. So I usually just bring up my animation timeline. Okay, I will set the end frame to 50 and just move this slightly backwards, insert keyframe, and move this forward, insert keyframe. So what we have here is just this basic animation, so that I want to just be tweaking parameters till I get something I'm happy with. Okay, so now selecting this bone, I'll shift select this and hit Ctrl Shift C like we did earlier. So we'll do transformation, and now we have that. Let's just collapse this. So let's just go ahead and play with all the settings. So the first thing you want to check on is the extrapolate. This enables the tile to keep rotating 360, because if you have this turned on, it just rotates once, but if you have the extrapolate checked, it just keeps rotating as you move the rig. And definitely, as I said earlier, once you're dealing with amateur, you need to make sure you're in local space. So for the source is basically the main controller rig, this bottom one here. So definitely it's only moving, it's not rotating or scaling. So definitely that's why we're going to select the location instead of the rotation or scale. And it's right now, let's determine where it's moving. So we can see from here that is the Z value, the Z value that is actually changing. So that's how we know the right place we should, the right parameter we should play with. So for the minimum, I'm just going to set it to -1, and for the maximum, I'm going to set it to +1. So when it moves like 1 meter, then when this bone moves like 1 meter, then this rotates 360. I don't know if I'm correct, but it's something like that. So now we are done with the source, so we can close that. So let's make sure we have the right one. Okay, everything is cool. So for the mapping, we'll deal with this later. Now for the destination, so this is just basically what you want to happen. So in this instance, what we want to happen is when we move the main controller, we want this to trigger a rotation, definitely in the X axis. So this is going to be like -360, -360, and +360. Okay, so right now it looks like nothing is happening. This is where the mapping comes into play. Usually, after you set everything up, you just want to play with the source axis. So I'm just going to set this to Z, and you can see immediately we have it working. So usually you just want to play with the source axis, and once you just mix and match everything, definitely you will get the right one. So right now what we can notice is the rotation is quite fast for just this little motion, so we need it to be slower. So for that, let's go to the source and set this to, so we set this to -5 and 5. So it's actually acting more realistically. Or let's say -3 and 3. So I think this is perfect. So we don't have to repeat all the steps. All we just need to do is select this and shift select this and hit Ctrl C to copy this nice copy attribute that comes by default with Blender. So if you don't have that, you can go to Preference, Add-ons, Copy, Attributes. So you want to make sure you have this checked, and if you have it checked, you're all good. So we want to repeat that, copy selected constraints. So for what we need is the transformation, and we'll hit OK, and it's just going to copy it. So finally, we definitely the back and the front tire don't move the same, because the back tire is the main engine that generates the motion for the car. The front tire is just like just to balance the energy. I'm not an engineer, but definitely the main source of motion is coming from the back tire. So for that, it's definitely going to be a bit slower since it has more friction. So we'll just go to the source and set this to -5 and 5. So it's more slower compared to the front tire. Okay, so everything is set, and now we'll be moving to the final step for this tutorial, which is the animation step. And basically I will show you how to make this curve automatically follow curves, and then we'll set all the procedural animation needed. Okay, so for the next step, what I want to do is select this cursor to selected. Okay, or we can hit Shift C, cursor to world origin. Okay, and add curve. So we'll add the paths. It looks something like this. We'll just scale it up slightly. So let's rotate it. So as you can see, I have my normals here. So the normals are going to control the direction of the car. So let's rotate this Z, rotate Z 90 degrees. Okay, and now we can just extrude this to where we want it. Okay, probably don't need this ones here. Okay, so here we'll hit Shift S, cursor to selected. So the cursor is placed at the tip, and we'll go to Object, Origin to 3D cursor. So if we rotate this is the point. So since we have our 3D cursor there, we'll just go ahead and add an empty. Okay, and hit Ctrl P, apply the rotation and scale, and I'll scale them down. Okay, so we'll select the empty, select the curve, Ctrl P, follow path. So it's just going to follow the animation. So now what we want to do is set this to like 200. Select the curve, go into the curve menu, set this to 200. So we have enough time for the animation to play. Awesome. So at this point, we don't need this animation again. So we can just go ahead and delete this. So now in object mode, we want to select this, the main object rig. Select, then go to object constraint, which is different from different from bone constraint. So once you go to object constraint, which is this one, add child off, and we'll select the empty, and it's going to go crazy. So what you're going to just do is set inverse, and now this is what we get. So the car is moving along the curve. Okay, so now we need to create those, get that kind of nice noisy motion, just to kind of show friction in the floor. So we don't want it to be too crazy, and which at this point I'm just going to add some leeway. So it's like 0.2, negative 0.2. So it's more smooth. So 0.2. then this is 0.1, negative 0.1. Awesome. So now we can just move this a bit crazy. So for the animation, what we want to do is just go bring out this tool panel here, and in the location, we'll do insert keyframe. So it's going to, with this we can, as I'm right clicking and inserting keyframe. With that, you just insert keyframe here just to keep everything neat. Okay, so now we can switch to our graph editor and bring this drop down. And at this point, we can just even turn off this child off, so we can just see how everything is playing along. So if we select this, the X location, we can go to modifiers, add noise. So you can see the car shaking. So we can space it out slightly, so it's not so crazy. And we can reduce the strength to like 0.3. So if we see something we like, then we can probably like 0.1 or 0.2 just for visibility's sake. And now we can copy this, go here, we paste it, and we paste it. Okay, so while we're see here, let's do the rotation. So the reason I'm rotating it instead of actually just moving this to get that rotation is because since we are like moving this in the object level, we cannot get this kind of cool effect. So that's why we can just use this to kind of get same effect. So basically what you want to do is select this. Since we have the X rotation unlocked, so we right click and insert single keyframe, unlike the previous one which we did just insert keyframe. For this we're inserting just single keyframe. So once you do that, it's going to just add a point there. And let's also do it for this one. Since we had it, insert single keyframe. Okay, so now we'll bring this drop down, select the X rotation, add a new modifier generator. So we can just play the animation. And it's kind of going backwards, so we want it to go forward. So I'm going to set this -1. So it goes forward. So it's quite fast for that. So let's say -0.4. -0.04 or negative 0.4 or 0.5. 0.05. Okay, so 0.05 or 0.1, it's perfect. So we replicate that for this again. Open the drop down, select the X, generate, set this to 0.1. So if you think that this stuff is the noise is quite weird, you can also always reduce it by just playing with this parameter. So you can play with it individually. So let's bring everything up together. We'll just turn on the child, and you can see it makes more sense now. And at this point, what I usually do to even push it even further is I go ahead and let's switch this back to our timeline and turn on auto keyframe. I go ahead and just animate the steering myself. It's quite easy to do this. Just to increase the authenticity of how much it's moving. You can use reference, of course, which is going to even improve the quality. Okay, so this is enough. So let's see what we have. As you can see, it's looking quite nice. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and if you've lasted up to this extent, Thank you so much for sticking with me. And thank you so much for all my new subscribers. I'm so happy that you guys have finally you guys helped me to get to like 12,000 subscribers. It's like a lot of progress for me since when I started. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for now. See you next time.